Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to College of Heaven's starting rosters. We're having a look at all of the colleges of Magic, all of the teams you can run in Dungeon Bowl, and putting together some example starting rosters. We are looking at 1 million gold pieces for these builds because that is what you run for a Dungeon Bowl game. That is what you start with Dungeon Bowl League, and if you go to a Dungeon Bowl tournament that uses a system very similar to ours at the Dorset Dungeon Bowl, that's what you start with. But in a tournament, you normally get some fancy extras on there as well. Now, the College of Heavens is one of the two colleges that got updated recently when the Norse team landed. So the College of Heavens has got a few sneaky extra players. So we're doing this update video. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the rosters that we looked at when Dungeon Bowl first landed, maybe a couple of new ones, and definitely look at what the Norse players kind of add to the College of Heavens teams. Okay, so the three players that got added to the College of Heavens was the Norse Linemen, the Norse Berserkers, and the Norse Valkyries. So the Valkyries, they're 0-2 special. The Berserkers are filling the role of the Blitzers here, so you can actually squeeze 4 of them onto a College of Heavens roster. But I do think that the biggest impact we have here for the College of Heavens is the Norse Linemen, and the reason for that is twofold. One, they're cheaper than the Skinks. This roster has Skinks as linemen at 60k, and their strength 2 and their stunty. Norse dudes, even though they can't run to save their lives, they're 50k. They're also strength 3 blockers, which is really, really valuable. When you think about filling out this roster, historically, we've only had Dungeon Ball for like 6 months, but the College of Heavens, right, you've got skink runners. That's your reserve. Now, skinks are incredible in Dungeon Bowl. If you are on the offense, if you are winning, movement 8, stunty, 3++ dodge is awesome. But if you want to stop somebody from roller coasting through your face, then they are almost useless. Okay, strength 2, armor 8+ with stunty means that if they get a solid smack on them, then they are basically gone. These boys here, alright, they've only got armor 8+, but they've got thick skull, they've got strength 3, and they've got block. And in Dungeon Bowl, you're not going to get a huge amount of skills playing around there, and that block skill is going to be monstrous. So Norse linemen added to this roster give you a cheaper, more consistent corridor filler. So that brings us to the menu of players for the College of Heavens. So the lineman slot, 0-16, skink runner lineman, or those Norse linemen. That gives you flex. You've got the skinks, who really are a positional now. The Norse linemen are excellent. 200k, you get 4 of them. You can chuck them in a corridor, and they are strength 3 block. Those skink runners at movement 8, dodge with 3++ movement, 3++ dodging because of that stunty ability. Phenomenal scorers. 2 choices for Blitzer now. So we've got the Nobility Blitzer. Now the Nobility Blitzer is excellent. Very expensive though, 105k. Movement 7, block and catch. With agility access means they are a really easy way to get blodgers on this team. They are really good. But now you've got a slightly cheaper and slightly more offensive choice when it comes to those Berserkers. 90k instead of 105k. They still have block, but these guys have got Frenzy, which means you are double dipping on the attack. And they've got jump up, so if it goes wrong, the next time they can block from the ground, or they can pop up for 0 movement. Meaning that their movement 6 now becomes movement 9 if you don't mark a downed Blitzer. Berserker, sorry. The throwers, human thrower, one of the best throwers in the game, right? It's a really useful piece here. The sure hands is not that useful in Dungeon Bowl, but what will happen is every now and again that ball's going to pop out and going to be in a couple of tackle zones, and that just gives you a 5+ with a reroll punt at getting that ball. Once that thrower has the ball though, it's game over. Passing 2+, pass ability for reroll, the thrower is going to be able to deliver that ball wherever you want it to go. It's an excellent piece for this team. And so are Soros's. So this team is just getting brutal. We've got Norse, we've got lizards, and we've got a smattering of useful humans. It is really starting to cook. 0-6 blockers for the blockers are Soros blockers, and they do not have block, which is amusing for blockers, but they still make very good blocks, even though they don't have block, even though they're called blockers. And then the special category, and this is an interesting one. The Valkyrie has been added. The Valkyrie comes in at 95k, movement 7. It's got some skills. They have got skills. None of them are really first tier skills. We've got pass, we've got catch, so you can maneuver the ball around. You don't do a huge amount of that in Dungeon Bowl, not until you really need to. So actually having pass and catch with potential a bit more pass to the human thrower and a bit of catch with the nobility blitzer means that you've got the ability to create stretch plays when you need to. Dauntless is going to be useful, and that's something that this player kind of feels a bit of a niche in this team. The Berserker's got block and frenzy. If you can get a decent assist, then it's going to be a hard hitter. But the dungeon meta does lean into some strength 4 and some strength 5 here and there, and actually wandering into a corridor with an ogre is likely to happen. And if you look at this roster, the best you've got is a Soros blocker at strength 4. Having Dauntless to give you that, what is it, a 3+ opportunity, a 1-die block and a strength 5 piece, really, really useful. And you've got the Chameleon Skink there. Now, on the board is awesome, not in Dungeon Bowl. The Chameleon Skink is awesome, probably not in Dungeon Bowl. Pass 3+ is great, but the Valkyrie is here with Pass 3+ and the Pass skill. And then you've got the Human Thrower with Passing 2+ and Plus. So if you want to be passing, that's the place to be. If you want the Chameleon Skink to intercept balls, take him to the 11s pitch. It's a cool menu. Norse really complements this team. It's starting to fill out. And Heavens, spoiler alert, very good in Dungeon Bowl. Okay, so let's move on to some of the rosters we looked at before. So we've got the mixed 2 reroll here. This one comes in at 990. 3 skink runners, 2 nobility blitzers, 4 Soros blockers, and 2 human throwers with 2 rerolls. This gives you a bit of everything. We've got 3 of those players at movement 8 and 3++ with dodge, right? And stunty, you've got 2 nobility blitzers who are your flexible all around. We can score, we can block, we can do what you need them to do. 4 Soros blockers will be fantastic at protecting the corridors, but also being able to combine their strength essentially to get good blocks to clear a path. You've got skinks. You only need a corner, and this is probably one of the things that we saw coming out of Dorset Dungeon Bowl and through filming our Dungeon Bowl Championship, that you only need a corner. And that corner run through can be absolutely massive. And having a Soros at strength 4 is going to give you a 1-die, maybe a 2-die block to clear out the way, even with no skills. Now, 2 human throwers is an interesting one. They are reasonably expensive, but having that free sure hands to pick up the ball when and if it comes out, but having that pass 2+ with the pass skill for that reroll means that if your thrower, and you've got 2 of them on this roster, so you can send one that way, when there is the ball around, then they actually have got a really good way of shimmying it down 6 squares to get it away from your opponent, or to get it to the person who can make that cheeky little corner run to score. 2 rerolls is going to save you when you need it to, but this team's got a lot of integral rerolls. We've got a lot of dodge, we've got a lot of block, we've got a lot of sure hands. It's a really well positioned team. Now, you've got the Norse flex coming here. So you've got Norse linemen that you can take and swap in with basically any of these players. Now there's a couple of things you can do here. You can drop a Norse lineman in, or 2 Norse linemen instead of the skinks. You kind of want the skink speed. You can bring a couple of berserkers in instead of the nobilities to create more of a punch. What you can do basically is you can use those positionals to take this roster and to flex it into a more slower combat focused version of this roster. You get that kind of gauge now, whereas before it was just kind of like, right, I got these dudes, this is the best I can do with it. But now you get to season it to your taste, and dropping a skink and taking a lineman is going to give you 1 more block piece. Dropping a blitzer and taking a berserker is going to give you a bit more of offensive power and some cash in the kitty. You've got a bit more flexibility here to build the roster in the way you want it to, and that's just going to allow you to have a bit more flexibility. It's very good. Soros Heavy roster comes in at 980. We've got 4 skinks that can be changed out for Norse linemen, 6 Soros blockers, 1 human thrower, and 3 rerolls. This one, it doesn't need much tweaking. 6 Soroses is massive. Okay, that is just your first contingent is Soroses, and I cannot stress enough how useful Sorai are to open treasure chests. Edge 5+ doesn't exist when you're opening a treasure chest. Armor 10+, pretty useful if that treasure chest, right, if it blows up, armor 10+, you're probably going to be okay. If it's a ball, it automatically gets the ball. So your Soros blockers here are excellent. And then they're just 1 handoff away from a skink runner running around. Now, there's a couple of things you can do to flex this roster. You can add in berserkers instead of Soros blockers. You can add in Norse linemen instead of your skinks. I probably wouldn't bother. This roster here is a pretty aggressive one. It's more aggressive than it looks. You can have those Norse linemen in there, but the Norse linemen are there for the matchups that are going to be a fight. This roster here spams Soros to get the ball, gives it to a skink, wins in 20 minutes. It's already potent, doesn't really need much Norse. But the 2 reroll human heavy build is where it starts to get a little bit more flexible. So 990 we had this build with 5 skinks, 4 nobility blitzers, 2 human throwers and 2 rerolls. Great mix of players, and this is where you get to flex it out. 5 skinks, no Soros here. This roster is really fragile. Really fragile. This is the kind of roster that actually you can blend that Norse team in. You get those linemen to start. They've got that block. You can start building a more plodding kind of control version instead of like that absolute rash dash to victory with the skinks. You chuck in a couple of berserkers. You've got those Norse linemen there. And the really cool thing about this roster is realistically you can build it out of a Norse box, okay? Ulfwereners and your berserkers become your 4 berserkers for this roster. The Valkyries become your 2 throwers, and the linemen fill out that role. You've got 1 Norse box. This is where it goes. It says human heavy. It is really Norse heavy in models, and that flexibility between blitzers and berserkers is really useful for you. The noble blitzers, are faster. They've got that agility access, but the berserkers are pretty meaty. So actually, it's a really good roster and a really good place to start out. If you've just got a Norse team, you run your Ulfwereners as berserkers, you run your berserkers as blitzers, you run your linemen as linemen, and your Valkyries as throwers. You've got your Norse team on the pitch. It's slightly better attuned for Dungeon Bowl. You've got the flexibility though if you've got a College of Heavens, because you can just chuck 1 or 2 skinks in there and you've just got an excellent combination of players. And the max combat roster, we've got 3 skinks who can be Norse linemen, you've got 4 blitzers who can be Norse berserkers, and you've got 4 Soros blockers with 1 reroll. Now the cool thing about this roster is that I wasn't even going to attempt it because there's so much fine tuning when it comes to accountancy in this build that I was busy doing actual work. But if you think about it, we can drop 3 skinks into 3 Norse linemen, save 30k, that gives us 40k left over. We can drop 2 nobility blitzers down into berserkers, that gives us another 30k, that gives us 70k to play with. Then we can probably take that money and upgrade a couple of our skinks, who are now Norse linemen, into Soros blockers potentially. So realistically, with a little bit of accountancy and seasoning to your own taste, this roster could be 3 Norse linemen, 4 Norse berserkers, and 6 Soros blockers. I haven't done the maths fully on that one because I think actually the right thing to do is to flex and have a bit of a mix. But the potential of 4 berserkers and 6 Soroses with a lineman is just amazing. But we do have a new roster here, which is the Norse heavy roster made of just Norse players. So 1 million gold, 4 rerolls, 5 Norse linemen, 2 of the Valkyries there, and 4 berserkers. And again, like I said, you can use the Ulfwerener models as your other berserkers if you want. Just make sure it's really clear to your opponent. 4 rerolls can be swapped out. You can drop a reroll and take a Norse lineman instead. It's an interesting one. Norse are consistent in the fight, but if you want your Norse linemen to be moving around and doing things, then you're doing them on a 3+. That adjustment from a 2+ go for it into a 3+ go for it is monstrous. So actually 3 rerolls is probably the minimum I would go with a Norse heavy roster. The Valks are awesome, the berserkers are great, but they are going to be making frenzy blocks, which means you're going to want some rerolls. The Norse linemen are great, but they are going to need to take some rushes to actually move to where you want them to do, which is again going to cost you rerolls. So if you've got a Norse team and you want to run them in Dungeon Bowl, there's a good 2 College of Heavens rosters here that you can go with, and if your opponent is nice and you buy them some chocolate or maybe a beer, they'll probably let you use a beer ball as a skink runner just for the fun of it. Now I like to pick a roster as a favourite. This one here is just a Lizardman team with a human thrower, right? It's sneaky good. Try it, you'll like it. Soros blockers can get the ball. Now, it can go really wrong, but Soros blockers are movement 6 and strength 4 and automatically picking up the ball out of a treasure chest, but armor 10+ means they're pretty well protected. All you have to do is deploy 6 Soroses at the beginning of this game, spread them out, open those treasure chests, challenge those corridors with teams of 2 strength 4 players. You bring in those skinks to be your reserve, and it's actually a pretty good combination. It's really good fun. It's a bit of a quick combo session though, and once your skinks die, your agility is absolutely out the door. But this one here, sneaky good fun, do give it a go. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up now. Let me know what you think of these rosters. Let me know what's worked for you, because I do like it when the comments become a useful place for us to kind of come here and add our ideas. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy dungeoneering. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content. We get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.